Well, we hope you had a wonderful holiday, and it is now time for the 2026 predictions, possible wildcard events, and the best Monopoly stocks. Welcome back to Navalier Market Buzz. Now, Dad, Maria continues to give you credit for predicting a 5% GDP growth in 2026. And you are starting to look a lot more credible after the third quarter GDP was revised up to 4.3% annual pace. What did you see that economists didn't see?
Well, what happened is the reason for the big upward revision to third quarter GDP was because of trade. It added 1.6% to the 4.3% GDP growth. So we have the second highest exports ever recorded, and imports are running a lot lower right now. So I was watching the trade numbers and anticipating that that would help, and it did. So that's what I saw, to be honest with you. And the reason I'm much more optimistic about 2026 is going to have even better trade numbers. And on top of that, the data center boom is getting bigger, and we have tax cuts next year. So there's a lot to look forward to.
But the Conference Board reported that consumer confidence has fallen for 5 consecutive months. Why is consumer spending growth at a 3.5% annual pace?
Yeah, that's a bit of a conundrum. The Conference Board report's very valid, and there's something called present situations and then forecasted, and people are just grumpy about the future. Hopefully they'll cheer up in the holidays here. I think a lot of it's the job market's still pretty spotty. But yeah, consumer spending was growing at a 3.5% annual pace in the third quarter GDP report. So the question is, how can that happen when confidence is so weak? And the answer is the baby boomers. There's a thing called a K-shaped economic recovery, where the boomers, the people that own homes and have stock portfolios, have more discretionary money to spend. And as you go down the age ladder, people run out of money. It's as simple as that. So, and the Conference Board is a survey, and they probably didn't call enough baby boomers. But, the economy should broaden out here. There's a lot of criticism that Trump's just helping rich people and all that stuff. And that's obviously his political opposition. But there is a tax cut coming next year, and it will put more money in people's pockets. If you put money in people's pockets, they tend to spend it, even if they're a little grumpy.
But then why do you expect 2026 economic growth to be faster?
There's 3 reasons. One is those tax cuts. Second is the data centers, which were an AI, which was overpowering our economy. Their orders are up 20% quarter over quarter, and they're up 50 to 65% year over year. So that boom will continue. And then finally, how do I say it in a nice way? It's the exports are going to get even bigger. And the exports are so big, it might actually close the trade deficit and eliminate it. And the main reason is just all that onshoring. If you look at the last trade number, it was due to pharmaceutical exports. The pharmaceuticals were made in Ireland and Switzerland not that long ago. Now the U.S. is making them. Eli Lilly's leading the way. Another is all the automotive onshoring. You can buy a BMW vehicle from South Carolina, but it has a lot of tariffs on it because it has German parts. Well, they're going to have more American-made parts on those vehicles. So just everything is returning to America right now. Now, a lot of our new manufacturing plants are totally automated and extremely efficient. So this is a very, very exciting time for what we call productivity too, and productivity adds to GDP growth.
Now, residential real estate in the past 2 quarters has declined. Can Trump help firm up a battered housing sector?
Yeah, he has to. So according to this most recent GDP report, residential real estate was a 5.1% annual drag on GDP in the second and the third quarters. That's the annual pace. And obviously we have a home builder as president, okay? So we have to fix this and fix it fast because rental prices have fallen. We've shown that previous market buzz videos fallen for 4 straight months. Before that, it was unchanged. So 5 months of just no growth. And then home prices are soft all around the country. Now, we happen to be in Rancho Santa Fe, California, which is obviously a very affluent pace, but even home sales are soft here. And a lot of that has to do with insurance. Okay, so they have to get rates down, and we probably going to need some insurance reform. Obviously, we've had fires in this part of the world.
Is the risk of deflation tied to the housing market woes?
Yeah, that's a big one. Most of our CPI inflation was this thing called owner's equivalent rent, and it has now gone poof and disappeared, and it might even turn negative. So that means inflation is going to be gone. We have the lower crude oil prices. Okay, that's going to keep the prices at the pump down, except here in California, because they are shutting down refineries and a pipeline, and it's just kind of a mess here. But outside of California, the prices at the pump should be falling. Furthermore, food costs are also moderating finally. Okay. So we get the catalyst of inflation was housing, and now housing is soft. And so we are going to get relief. And finally, we are importing deflation from China. Okay. And I can't stress that enough. You're showing a clip of how you can buy a 98-inch TV at Best Buy for, I think, $1,300 or $1,400. So that's pretty darn cheap. Not always need a 98-inch TV, but if you want one, it's cheap. And that's just a sign of the deflation we see. America is such an efficient economy. Between the Costco's and the Walmarts, we just get everything a lot cheaper than the rest of the world. And one last thing you're going to see happening, the dollar has firmed up in recent months, and it's going to get stronger and stronger. And as those currencies get weaker, it just means everything gets cheaper. So yeah, we are bordering on deflation, as I mentioned on Maria's show. And every economist is trained to fight deflation. And that's why somebody like Christopher Waller, one of the candidates for Federal Reserve Chairman, they said we got to cut at least 100 basis points. I'm sure President Trump would like a 200 basis point cut. And that will fix the housing market and add to GDP growth.
But is the fear of deflation causing gold prices to soar?
Yeah, it is. You're showing a chart in the last 3 years of gold, silver, and platinum. Believe it or not, silver and platinum have just passed gold in appreciation. And there's just a lack of confidence in central banks, period, around the world. And because gold is a reserve currency, the banks keep buying more gold to basically shore up their credibility. Silver and platinum are due to an industrial demand. The data centers do help the demand for silver. Platinum obviously goes in your catalytic converters. You can also use it for jewelry, but the demand for platinum is also up. Russia is a huge supplier of platinum, and prices are also up because people are trying not to buy from Russia.
Now, globally, Europe seems to be on edge right now with the protests and the cancellation of fireworks in Paris. What is going on?
Yeah, well, Ed Yardini talked about that in our show about a class of civilizations. And essentially what's happened in a lot of major city centers, they are dominated now by immigrants, like Brussels. It's dominated by all the new immigrants they let in. And so the culture has changed. Some of these people are not pro-European, okay? And that caused France to cancel their fireworks because they're on alert for potential terrorist events. And Turkey just arrested over 115 people that were planning, attacks on Christmas markets and things like that. Fortunately, we got through Christmas without an incident. But yeah, the Paris fireworks show is a big deal, and it's now canceled. So that's not good for their economy. But the other thing that they've been protesting is a lot of the farm policies, and this has been going on forever. But the protests are starting to work. Keir Starmer, London was shut down with the farmers being upset about inheritance taxes. So Keir Starmer, the prime minister, is going to now provide inheritance tax relief to the farmers. So that worked. The French protests were much more interesting because they were spraying manure on government buildings, and they also did not only in Paris, they did in Brussels. And that was all about culling their herds. Some of the cows are sick, and they say if your cow's sick, you got to kill it. But even if your cows are healthy, you got to cull the herds to comply with net zero. And this has been going on for years. So like in Ireland, they're killing like 6,000 dairy cows a year, and all for net zero reasons. And then the last reason the farmers in Europe are so upset, Germany's trying to push through a bill to allow a lot of free trade with Latin America, where they literally put the cows on a boat and send them to Europe, okay? Or they send all their agriculture products on boats to Europe. And guess what? They don't have to play by any of the rules the European farmers do. So the European farmers are just very, very upset. And this is just one of the many things that undermines the European Union. Okay, a lot of people don't agree with their mandates. And the European Union, conceptually, is fine. It's supposed to be a trade and monetary union. But what they do is they say, you must do this or we'll deny you money. Okay, and there's just a lot of pushback, especially in Eastern Europe. Okay. Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic have pushed back. But all these revolts were started with farmers, and they actually started in the Netherlands, of all places. And I would not be surprised if the European Union eventually implodes. Britain's already left it, and I would not be surprised if another country or two leaves. And we'll have to see. It may not happen next year, but it may happen the year after when there's more elections.
All right, let's talk about some predictions. What are the wild cards for 2026?
Well, obviously, it's Ukraine, Venezuela, and the midterm elections. As far as Ukraine is concerned, obviously, President Zelensky is meeting with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He's working on pulling the troops out, having a demilitarized zone. He needs security agreements. Europe has been cut out of these negotiations. It's pretty much Ukraine, Russia, and the U.S. negotiating this. Europe seems to be very upset with this, but they've also been pulling their aid from Ukraine, which makes President Zelensky really kind of have to pick up the pace of pushing this peace deal. So we'll see if Russia cooperates. Obviously, the framework actually came from Russia, and whether that's right or wrong, that's what's happened. So we want to have peace and prosperity, and that would provide a relief rally if we could stop that fighting. The next thing is, what are we doing in Venezuela? We got naval blockades. We've killed over 100 people on these drug boats. I think there's been at least 29 strikes. What are we doing? And we've already seized 2 super tankers full of oil. These are sanctioned tankers. Now, Chevron has a licensing agreement in Venezuela, and those tankers are allowed to pass. But clearly, but then Chevron can't send the money back to Venezuela. That's another thing that's going on. So obviously, President Maduro is being choked off financially, and I assume he's going to have to go into exile somewhere. And but the U.S. is reasserting its leadership. We're essentially, I wouldn't say we're abandoning Europe, but we basically are less interested in protecting Europe, especially as they change culturally and don't share Western values, And so we're asserting ourselves in our hemisphere. And whether that's right or wrong, that's another matter. A lot of people think it's more about oil than anything, but because Venezuela has the biggest oil reserves in the world, I'm sure the U.S. would like to help that country grow and prosper. And we're going to have to send in more oil companies than just Chevron to help them do that. So it's going to be interesting, but it's a wild card. And if obviously we can boost Venezuela's oil production, we're going to permanently have low oil prices. We're the lowest now in 5 years right now. As far as the midterm elections are concerned, that's why the media is so negative, because the President Trump's opposition can't have good news for the next 11 months. So they're just going to have to basically throw mud on everything that happens, saying that the economic recovery is unequal, it's inequitable. They have to complain about everything and anything, inflation and jobs. And it's up to President Trump to go out and sell it. He's pretty good at that. So, but if he does not maintain a Republican majority in Congress, then he won't get anything done. He will be a lame duck, and they'll just start to try to impeach him like they did before. And so he doesn't want that to happen. And so he's going to be working very, very hard. But those are the big events that I foresee. But there's a lot of prosperity in the pipeline just from all that onshoring. And hopefully that will filter down and it'll lift most Americans.
Now, what are the best Oasis stocks if things get bumpy in 2026?
Yeah. So what we've done is we've sorted our stocks by their net operating margins after taxes. Interdigital, which is IDCC, has a 53.5% net operating margin. NVIDIA has a 53% net operating margin. Robinhood has a 51.9% net operating margin. App Loving, that's APP, 50.4% net margin. AGI, which is gold stock, is 33.5% net operating margins. AEM, another gold stock, 32.6%. Lilly is 31%, which is pretty impressive. They've been forced to cut the price of drugs, but they're making it up in volume. Okay. Then we have UI, which is cabling and all the data centers, and you can even buy UI switches for your home, especially when you upgrade your internet. You need new switches. Their operating margins are 28.7%. Palantir Technologies, we've talked about a lot, which is of course a fundamental A stock. Net operating margins are 28.1%. And it's effectively a monopoly. King Cross Gold, that's KGC, is 27.3%. And then, believe it or not, Royal Caribbean, the cruise line, is 23.2%. So the reason operating margins are important is that I watch them. And when they're fat like they are, then these companies are monopolies dominating their business. Eventually, competition can arrive, okay? And but while the margins are fat, you just enjoy it, okay? And monopolies are safe, okay? These are fundamentally safe and superior stocks. If the operating margins come under compression, sure, I'll sell them. But usually they can dominate their respective business for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and beyond. And obviously, NVIDIA is the most dominant at this time, but clearly we have a lot of other monopoly related stocks. So that's how you get rich. You buy these monopoly stocks, you hang on. They all have good sales and earnings. You can see they have wonderful stock grades, and that's our goal, get you rich.
And I want to end on a subscriber question. Can you talk about the inverted yield curve?
Yeah, that was a problem under Janet Yellen. And specifically, our former Treasury Secretary lost control of our Treasury auctions. And we had some very poor long-term bond auctions. So you know what she did? She just sold more intermediate and shorter-term Treasury securities. And that's why we had an inverted yield curve for some time. Now, that has been fixed under Scott Bessent, okay? I realize that long-term rates went up a little after the last Fed meeting, but short-term rates have come down, and the Fed has taken money from their balance sheet, and they're purposely pushing short-term rates down with their open market activities, and the Fed funds rate is a short-term rate, so that's why we know we're going to have more Fed rate cuts. But Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, fixed the inverted yield curve, and it's now normal. It's getting steeper, and in Scott Bessent, we trust.
And lastly, can you talk about Tesla?
Yeah, Tesla stock is very strong, and it's mainly strong on the anticipation of the robotaxi. In fact, they are now making the two-door robotaxi without the steering wheel. So you'll get in, there'll be a pad for you, and it will take you somewhere. So these are supposed to be launched here pretty soon. Now, Tesla's also very proud that when San Francisco had a power failure, their robotaxis kept going while the Waymos stopped. Now, in defense of Google and Waymo, they stopped because the traffic lights went out, okay? They thought that might be dangerous, okay? Because they can see the lights and all. And but Tesla's very, very exciting about this robotaxi service. They're launching it, and it's a big deal. And we'll see if we're going to have autonomous pods take us everywhere. And that's the future that Elon has predicted. And people believe in Elon. They want him to become a trillionaire. They've given him a great pay package. We'll see if he can fulfill this vision. And that's why the stock's doing so well, even though the car sales aren't that strong right now.
Well, thank you so much for your predictions. Thank you all for watching. Let us know in the comments below what your 2026 predictions are. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already, but we will see you all next week for a new video, and Happy New Year's.